The sharp crack of a cup shattering on the tiled floor silenced the small cafe in Santa Esperanza. A Latina woman stood behind the counter, her white shirt stained with coffee, facing 3 officers in gray uniforms. Sheriff Hank McCord smirked the kind of smile that belonged to a man used to being obeyed. "Reporter, huh? Around here we don't like strangers asking questions." His raspy voice, tinged with a mocking laugh, cut through the heavy air that smelled of burnt coffee. Isabella Cruz tightened her grip on the camera in her hand, her gaze locked on the man before her. Noon sunlight streamed through the dusty window, casting her face half in shadow, half in light. She looked ordinary, a woman in her 30s, with dark hair tied neatly, worn jeans, and sand-streaked shoes. No one would guess she was an FBI agent. All they saw was a small woman daring to look power in the eye without flinching. Beside Hank, Deputy Joe Vargas chewed gum noisily, his fingers tapping the gun at his side. "Reporter, huh? Or maybe a spy from one of those Mexican human rights groups. Nobody here needs your protection." Laughter erupted across the cafe. The mocking sound rippled through the faces of regulars, the truck driver, the postman, the store clerk, all silent now watching. No one wanted to cross the sheriff of this town. Isabella bent to pick up her press badge that had fallen from her pocket. It flipped over, revealing a sliver of shining metal. For an instant, the reflected light made Vargas squint, but he dismissed it as Hank's laughter filled the room. "Filming, huh, in Santa Esperanza? I make the law. You want to record something, you ask my permission first." Isabella's voice was calm. "I'm just covering life on the border. I'm not here to harm anyone, Sheriff," Good Hank said, raising an eyebrow. "Then you can stop ruining my coffee, put the camera down and leave." She placed the camera on the table. In that brief moment, her fingers slid lightly over a side button, a motion too small for anyone to notice. A silent signal was sent. Data began streaming straight to the FBI servers in El Paso, where an automated system archived every frame, every sound. Vargas stepped forward, snatching the camera from her hands. Strange device. Could be surveillance equipment. He slammed it to the floor. The crack of breaking plastic echoed through the cafe. Isabella bit her lip, feeling the quiet pity in a few watching eyes. An old Mexican woman bowed her head and murmured a prayer. No one else moved. Hank pulled a napkin from the counter and wiped his hands, his tone casual as if discussing the weather. "In this town, outsiders tend to find trouble. Best get in your car and drive off before sundown." Isabella said nothing. What burned inside her wasn't fear, but a cold fury. She'd seen this kind of power too often, men in uniform who believed the law was their personal weapon. But here on this border, she hadn't come just to film. She had come to end a rotten reign. The cafe door burst open, desert wind sweeping in and scattering receipts across the counter. Vargas grabbed her arm and shoved her outside. "Go before I arrest you for obstructing an officer." Isabella met his eyes. "You're making a mistake." No, Hank's voice dropped low, his blue eyes glinting like a predator's. "You made the mistake, stepping into my town." Outside, sunlight blazed down on the dirt lot. Vargas tossed the broken camera into the sand. "Guess that's the end of your little report, lady." Isabella knelt, gathering the pieces one by one, her voice eerily calm. "You think you control everything, but something's already been sent." "What's been sent?" Hank growled. She looked up, eyes burning like molten steel. "Justice." Both men burst out laughing. Hank stepped closer, leaning down until she could smell the smoke on his breath. Justice. In Santa Esperanza. Justice wears this uniform. He slapped his chest where his silver badge gleamed. And I'm the one wearing it. Isabella didn't answer. In her head, a soft chime from her smartwatch sounded 3 times the signal confirming a secure transmission. El Paso had received the data. Everything, including that last sentence, was being recorded. Vargas shoved her into an old patrol car and drove toward the station. Through the window, Isabella watched the cafe sign Coyote's Rest fade into the distance. A memory surfaced. This was where she'd once met a witness named Rafael Torres 2 years ago. He'd told her something she never forgot. Here, justice sleeps with power. Now she was back, and that long sleep was about to end. The Santa Esperanza police station sat at the end of a dusty road, its paint peeling, its metal roof rusted. From afar, it looked more like an abandoned truck stop than a place of law. Vargas yanked the door open and pulled her out. Inside, the air reeked of mold. 2 officers at a side table looked up from their card game curiosity mixing with amusement. Hank set his hat on the desk and turned his chair. "Sit down, reporter." She sat silently, sweat running down her neck, soaking into her collar. Outside, a fan creaked like a racing heartbeat. Hank opened a file, just a few printed lines on a page. Real name, Isabella Cruz. Citizenship, American. Born in Tucson. Hank grunted, scanning the paper. "Can't find you in any press registry? Freelance reporter. That's right. What's your side job then? Smuggling intel, sending data to someone in Mexico." Isabella tilted her head slightly, her voice low but steady. "I send it to people who still believe in justice." Hank's lip twitched. "Careful with words like that." "I don't need to be careful," she replied, "because I'm not lying." In that instant, Vargas, standing behind her, yanked open her jacket pocket. Something small clattered to the floor, a silver badge gleaming under the light. The room froze. Hank bent to pick it up, turning it over in his hand. FBI. He let out a harsh, dry laugh. "You can buy these online for $20. You think this toy scares me?" Isabella's eyes locked on his. "I don't need to scare you. I just need you to keep talking. Every word you've said is being recorded." Hank leaned in close, his breath thick with tobacco. "You don't get it, sweetheart. Around here, people with cameras lose their jobs and people who talk disappear." Isabella smiled faintly. "Then you're about to lose more than a job." Outside, the sun tilted west, casting a red glow over the sign that read, Santa Esperanza Police Department. Inside, silence thickened heavy as the air before a storm. Isabella sat upright, hands clasped, eyes steady on the man across from her. In her mind, one thought echoed clearly. Justice doesn't come from a gun. It comes from proof. And she had just gotten her first piece of it. Night descended on Santa Esperanza like a heavy blanket smothering every sound. In the interrogation room, the pale fluorescent light cast a sickly hue on Isabella's face. On the wall hung a map of the town dotted with red pins, evidence of a tangled web of power only insiders could decipher. Hank McCord leaned back in his chair, sipping thick coffee, studying her like a fish, freshly caught. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in, Miss Cruz?" His voice dragged with a hint of pleasure. "Posing as a reporter, obstructing an officer, maybe even interfering with a federal investigation. You're not leaving this building tonight." Isabella took a deep breath. The air smelled of mold-burnt coffee and authority. She recalled what her instructor at Quantico had once said, "Control your breathing, slow your heart." The strongest interrogator isn't the one who talks the most, but the one who knows how to wait. She stayed still, her eyes calm and unreadable. Deputy Joe Vargas pushed the door open, holding a phone. "No record of her in any media registry, sir." "I checked everything." Hank nodded. "Told you, didn't it?" She's no journalist. Could be a foreign agent." Vargas smirked. "Or some activist spy from across the border. They've been getting crafty lately." Isabella tilted her head slightly, her tone even. "What exactly are you afraid of, gentlemen? The truth or the woman bringing it?" Hank laughed, the sound dry and sharp. "You talk like you're in a courtroom. But this isn't a courtroom. This is Santa Esperanza, and I am the law." He slammed his hand on the table, the papers trembling under the force. "You're going to sign this statement admitting to unlawful entry. Do that, and maybe I'll go easy on you." Isabella glanced at the document, the scrawled words accusing her of crimes she hadn't committed. She didn't touch the pen. "If you truly believe you are the law, why must you keep inventing new ones to trap people?" Hank's lip twitched, the first crack in his composure. "Enough!" Vargas cuffed her. Vargas stepped forward, his rough hand gripping her wrist. Isabella didn't resist, only said softly, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "Why not?" "Because you just made yourself part of a federal investigation." Hank shot to his feet, the chair crashing into the wall. "You think a few threats are going to scare me?" Isabella met his eyes. "It's not a threat. It's fact. You've been recorded since the moment you walked into Coyote's Rest. Every sound, every image is stored in El Paso, and tomorrow morning the FBI's Internal Affairs Division will be watching it." The silence that followed was absolute. Vargas froze. Hank tried to appear composed, but the vein in his neck pulsed visibly. "She's lying," he muttered. "She has to be lying." The door opened, and a young officer entered, whispering something in Hank's ear. He nodded, forcing his voice back into authority. "All right, Cruz. We'll hold you overnight and transfer you to the county in the morning. Let's see how bold you are then." Vargas led her out through a narrow corridor that reeked of bleach and damp walls. The lights flickered, casting jumping shadows on the concrete. The holding cell was barely 2 steps wide, its walls cracked and cold. When the metal door clanged shut, the sound was final, like a full stop. But for Isabella, it was only the beginning. She sat down on the iron chair, her back to the wall, heartbeat, steady breath measured. Beneath her sleeve, her smartwatch blinked blue. The signal was stable. Protocol. Bravo. 6. Functioning normally glowed the tiny text on the auxiliary lens of the shattered camera, which Hank never realized contained a backup device. Outside in the hallway, Vargas spoke quietly to another officer. "The boss says we'll transfer her in the morning, but word is she might never make it there." "What do you mean, you know the boss?" "Anyone who causes trouble here disappears." Isabella caught every word through the crack under the door. In her mind, the plan formed swiftly. Her original mission had been to gather evidence of extortion, but now she knew it ran deeper Police City Hall, maybe even the state. She needed an ally, and she knew exactly where to find one. By midnight, the station was silent. Vargas was at his desk, half asleep, over a cup of coffee. Soft snores drifted from the next room. Isabella turned her wrist, slightly removing a thin metal bracelet engineered to unlock standard police cuffs. 3 clicks, a faint sound like a breath. She stood quietly. Barefoot steps made no noise on the cold tiles. From her shoe, she retrieved a tiny chip, a duplicate of the data sent to El Paso, containing everything from the cafe confrontation to Hank's threats during interrogation. She slipped it into a crack beneath the window frame, ensuring that if every signal failed, proof would still survive. The clock struck 2. The cell door opened with a soft creak. A figure appeared, Night Shift Lieutenant Carlos Peña. Short, thin eyes, uncertain. "Who are you really?" he whispered. "The person you've been waiting for?" Isabella said. "You filed 3 complaints against Hank McCord, and they were all buried, weren't they?" Carlos froze. "How do you know that?" "Because I read the internal files before coming here. I know you're the only one left who still wants to see Santa Esperanza clean again." He glanced down the hall. "If I help you, I lose my job. Maybe my life. If you don't, you'll live in fear for the rest of it. I won't be here long. You choose." Silence. Then Carlos pulled out a key. "There's someone who might help. Former cop named Rafael Torres. He knows where Hank keeps his black files, but he hates police. You'll have to convince him yourself." Isabella nodded. "Get me out." Carlos opened the back door. The desert wind rushed in, carrying the smell of dust and burnt fuel. She stepped into the darkness without looking back. Behind her, the glow of the police station faded. Somewhere in the distance, the growl of a truck engine rolled through the night. Isabella knew one thing with absolute certainty: the hunt had begun, but this time she wasn't the prey. At dawn, the desert of Santa Esperanza blazed in hues of red and orange, glowing like burning embers. The dry wind whipped against Isabella's face, forcing her to pull her jacket tighter. Carlos's old pickup truck groaned as it rattled down the dirt road, leading to the outskirts where Rafael Torres lived in seclusion. He had once been Hank's deputy, the only man brave enough to speak out about the protection rackets, and the price was exile, disgrace, and the loss of his family. When the truck stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse, Carlos said quietly, "From here, you're on your own." He doesn't like strangers, especially cops. "Do you think I'm a cop?" Isabella asked with a half-smile. Carlos glanced at her, his eyes caught between worry and respect. "I think you're something Hank can't control, and that scares him to death." Isabella stepped down, sand crunching beneath her boots. Before her stood a makeshift wooden shack, its windows sealed with metal sheets. She knocked 3 times. No answer. On the 4th, the clink of a lock broke the silence, and a man appeared. His beard was rough eyes, sunken voice, raspy like desert sand. "The cops send you?" "No," Isabella replied. "I came to finish what they started." He stared at her for a long moment, scanning every detail: dusty shoes, worn jacket, eyes cold but unpretentious. "Who are you, Isabella Cruz?" "Federal agent. I'm investigating the corruption in Santa Esperanza. I know you tried to submit evidence about Hank McCord's ledger, but it was buried." Rafael let out a short, bitter laugh. "Buried. I lost my job. My house burned down. My wife took my kid and left. What I lost wasn't just a file, it was faith. But you still have the truth," Isabella said. "And I need it." His gaze softened slightly. "I don't trust anyone wearing a badge anymore, even the FBI." "Then trust yourself," Isabella said calmly. "If you help me, I can protect you. If you don't, Hank will come for you soon. I saw his face when he heard your name." Rafael was silent for a long time. Outside, the wind howled through leaning power poles. Finally, he set the shotgun down. "What do you want to know?" the ledger, Isabella said. "I heard it lists every extortion payment, every victim, and even offshore accounts in the Caymans." Rafael nodded. "I've seen it. Hank keeps it in a safe in his office, locked by code and fingerprint. Only he and Mayor Camila Ochoa know it. The name made Isabella pause. Mayor Camila Ochoa. Yeah, she's the one pulling the strings. Hank's just her enforcer. He poured cold coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Every time the money comes in, Camila takes half. She uses her political network to shield the entire operation. Isabella said nothing, feeling her pulse quicken. The story matched perfectly with the data she'd received from El Paso. She murmured almost to herself, "They're not just corrupt, they're organized." Raphael's expression hardened into resolve. "If I help you get that ledger, what do I get?" Just as Isabella said, her voice steady and low. Not the kind they define, but the kind that makes the whole country know the name Santa Esperanza. Raphael smirked, the first real smile he'd managed in years. "You talk like you actually believe in it?" "I do," she said, "because I've seen it win." Outside, the sun rose higher, pouring gold across the burning sand. Raphael pulled the curtain aside, light flooding the room and washing over his weathered face. "All right," he said. "I'll help you. But once we start, there's no turning back." Isabella met his gaze unwavering. "I didn't come here to turn back." The desert wind roared, carrying the scent of metal and gasoline. In that instant, Raphael realized the woman standing before him wasn't just chasing a story, she was a flame ready to burn down the rotten empire he'd once served. The battle for Santa Esperanza had begun quietly in a wooden shack, surrounded by sand and searing sunlight. That afternoon, Santa Esperanza was bathed in golden sunlight, but beneath the town's calm surface, a storm was forming. Outside the town hall, a crowd gathered for the council's monthly meeting where Mayor Camila Ochoa would unveil her plan for a border industrial development zone. To the townspeople, it was just another economic project. But to Isabella and Raphael, it was the perfect cover for a network of human trafficking and money laundering run by Hank McCord and Camila for years. They split their roles. Raphael sat in the back, disguised as an audio technician, while Isabella played the part of a local reporter, her hair neatly tied, dark glasses hiding eyes trained to capture every detail. The tiny camera hidden in her shirt button had already been activated, transmitting live to the FBI servers in El Paso. Camila took the stage to a scattering of polite applause. In her 40s, with chestnut hair and a polished politician's smile, she spoke with the ease of someone who knew the cameras loved her. Beside her stood Hank McCord, his uniform pressed crisp badge gleaming, bowing to the crowd like a star from an old movie. "Ladies and gentlemen, Camila began Santa Esperanza is entering a new era. Jobs, safety, and opportunity await us." Her voice was so sweet, it almost made the audience forget that more than 30 migrant workers had vanished in recent months. Isabella took notes, eyes fixed on the stage. She waited for the public Q&A. When Camila finished her speech, Isabella rose, her voice clear and steady. "Madam Mayor, I have a question. Is it true that the funding for this project comes from offshore accounts specifically in the Cayman Islands?" The room went still. Camila flinched slightly, then recovered with a practiced smile. "And you are Isabella Cruz, independent journalist?" "I don't respond to baseless rumors," Camila replied coolly. "Our financial dealings are completely transparent." From the front row, Hank stood up, his voice heavy as lead. "You should watch your words. Defaming the government is a serious offense, and silencing the people isn't," Isabella countered, meeting his gaze head-on. Hank strode closer, his shadow stretching long across the polished floor. You think you can come here, smear our names, and walk away? A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Raphael, in the back, quietly filmed everything, his finger pressing the upload button just as Hank reached out to snatch the microphone from her hand. But Isabella didn't back down. "I'm asking on behalf of those who can't," she said firmly. "How many have disappeared after working in your so-called industrial zone?" Sheriff Camila slammed the table. "Security, remove her." Two guards moved forward, but Raphael stood up pretending to adjust the cables. A small short circuit sent a burst of static through the speakers. In the brief confusion, Isabella raised her voice, each word sharp and deliberate. "I have evidence of financial transfers between Camila Ochoa and Hank McCord, totaling $4.2 million over the past 3 years. All data is stored and currently being sent to federal authorities." Silence fell over the hall. Then chaos erupted. Camila's face turned purple with rage. "You're lying! Then let justice decide," Isabella replied. Officers escorted her out, but through the blinding light, she caught the faces of the people, some bowed in fear, others lit by fleeting hope. Raphael followed her until the doors slammed shut, then turned to the hidden camera behind the control table. The entire confrontation had been recorded. That night, in the old wooden cabin, Raphael opened his laptop. The video played showing Camila's face, Hank's glare, and Isabella's declaration. He looked at her. "Do you realize what you've done? They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "And you?" she asked. "I'm done hiding," he said, exhaling heavily. "I'm tired of being afraid." Isabella turned toward the window. Outside, the town glowed under streetlights, but beyond the backyard, another light flickered, the headlights of a police car quietly parked a few blocks away. "They're here," she whispered. Raphael shut the laptop. "We don't have much time. If we want that black ledger, it has to be tonight. By morning, they'll move it or destroy it." Isabella nodded. "I'm ready." She tightened her jacket, checking the recorder hidden in her button. In her mind, the plan unfolded step by step. Infiltrate the town hall, access the archives, copy the ledger, get out. Before Hank realized what was happening, every move had been calculated, except for one thing: emotion. As she stepped out the door, Raphael called after her. "If something goes wrong, don't come back for me. Finish it." She turned, her voice calm and resolute. "I didn't come here to watch another person get buried by fear." The desert wind rose as she drove toward the center of town, carrying the scent of gasoline and dust. In the distance, the lights of the town hall glowed against the night sky, shining like a beacon. Isabella pressed down on the accelerator. Inside, her fear mingled with determination, the same force that had broken many agents, but had also made a few into legends. Santa Esperanza was asleep, but justice was not, and tonight it was about to awaken. The night in Santa Esperanza simmered with the heat that lingered after a blazing day. The streetlights cast a dim glow on oil-stained pavement, where border trucks had once rumbled through like the lifeblood of the town. Now only silence remained, thick and deliberate. Isabella stood across the street from the town hall, hidden in the shadow of an old warehouse. The yellow light in the distance brushed across her face, half illuminated, half obscured her eyes, calm to the point of being unsettling. Through her earpiece, Raphael's voice crackled softly. "I'm inside the Eastern Records room. Their security cameras are ancient, but there's still a night guard on duty. You've got 5 minutes, no more." "That's enough," Isabella replied, her lips barely moving. She slipped over the fence, her movements precise and soundless. The soles of her soft shoes slid over the sand as her shadow blended into the gray walls. The side door was only locked with a simple mechanism already opened by Raphael. Inside the hallway was long and cold smelling of bleach and old paper. She moved quickly, tapping her watch to confirm the signal. Protocol Bravo 6 was live, all data automatically transmitting to El Paso. The records room sat at the end of the corridor behind a door marked Restricted Access Authorized, Personnel Only. She eased it open, the hinge creaking faintly, freezing her in place for a heartbeat. No response. Only the low hum of a vent fan filled the air. In the dim light, rows of steel cabinets stood neatly labeled by year, month, and case type. Raphael was crouched in front of a large safe against the far wall. 3 layers of locks, he whispered. "I need time." "We don't have any," Isabella replied, her eyes fixed on the hallway. She heard footsteps approaching, steady, deliberate, the sound of boots on tile. Raphael's hands trembled slightly. 1 more minute. Isabella drew her silenced pistol, hiding behind a file cabinet. When the figure appeared under the faint window light, she saw the night guard, a heavy-set man with a flashlight. "Anyone here?" he called, voice groggy. The beam swept across the corridor, pausing on the half-open door. Isabella stepped out silent as a shadow. She reached him before he could raise the light again. "Quiet," she said softly, her tone cold and measured. "I don't want to hurt you. Sit down and stay still for 10 minutes. When you stand up, everything will be different." The man froze, eyes widening at the glint of silver from the badge on her belt. Something in her gaze stopped him cold. You're federal," he stammered. "No," Isabella said evenly. "I'm the one who's here to end what you've been hiding." He slowly lowered the flashlight and backed away, fear flickering across his face. Isabella gave a small nod, turning back toward Raphael. The safe was open. Inside, a brown leather ledger rested like a hidden treasure. Raphael, wearing gloves, flipped it open. The pages were dense with names, amounts, transfer codes, and one recurring set of initials, C.O. Camilla Ochoa Isabella, murmured. "Exactly," Raphael said. "This is the original. I'll photograph every page and give you a copy." Isabella activated her phone scanner. Page after page turned beneath the soft blue glow. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing this moment would change the town's fate forever. Suddenly, the wail of sirens shattered the silence, sharp and urgent. Raphael's head snapped up, his face draining of color. "Hank, he's here." Isabella killed the lights, pulling Raphael into the shadows. The beam of headlights swept through the windows, sliding across the walls. Hank's voice thundered outside, low and furious. "I got a report of a break-in. Turn on every light in the building." The entire hall flooded with brightness. Raphael grabbed her wrist. "Back exit." They ran down the corridor, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, shouted commands rang out. "Stop, hands up!" Isabella didn't stop. She dragged Raphael toward the emergency stairwell, rushing down into the basement. They burst through a steel door that led to the parking lot behind the town hall. Outside, the desert wind lashed their faces, heavy with dust. "Go," she ordered. They jumped into an old pickup parked nearby. Raphael started the engine tires spinning, throwing up sand. Behind them, gunfire erupted, bullets sparking against the metal frame. Isabella ducked low, her voice steady. "Stay straight! Don't stop!" The truck tore down the dirt road, racing out of the city center. In the distance, the glow of the town hall faded into darkness, swallowed by the desert's vast emptiness. Raphael exhaled hard. We have the evidence. They'll never escape this. No, Isabella said quietly. But now they'll be coming for us. They stopped at the edge of town where the silver moonlight stretched over the dunes. Isabella pulled out her phone and sent the full scan to the FBI server. The screen flashed, "Upload completed." She looked up at Raphael, her tone softening. "If I don't make it go to El Paso, they'll know what to do." Raphael studied her face. "You always talk like you're ready to die." "No," she said with a faint, sorrowful smile. "I just know justice always demands a price." From afar, the rumble of engines grew louder, headlights flickering like predators in the night. Hank had mobilized the entire force. Isabella took a deep breath, raised her gun eyes fixed on the dusty road ahead. "Raphael," she said slowly, "tonight isn't just about survival. It's the first proof of freedom, and I intend to protect it." The wind roared swirling sand around them, wrapping two small figures, standing on the edge of the desert, two souls defying an empire. In the distance, Santa Esperanza still shimmered under its calm lights, as if unaware of the war about to unfold. But in the silence, justice had awoken, and it would not rest until the guilty were brought to their knees. The sky over Santa Esperanza was the color of ash as dawn crept in. Thin streaks of clouds were torn apart by the first light casting a hazy glow across the desert dust. Raphael's old pickup truck came to a stop at the edge of an abandoned mine where the sealed tunnels had once hidden smugglers decades ago. Now it was the only refuge they had after a night of running. Raphael turned off the engine, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the rocks. "Hank's hunting us, that's for sure. He'll lock down the whole town before the sun gets too high." Isabella checked her gun, swapping magazines with practiced precision. "I need an hour. The data's been sent to El Paso, but I have to verify the transmission. If the system's been breached, all the evidence could vanish." Raphael frowned. "You think someone in the FBI sold you out?" Isabella didn't answer right away. She stared into the desert where dawn was swallowing the last traces of night. "I don't think. I know. Someone in the office is feeding Hank information. He knows my every move before I make it." Raphael exhaled and leaned back against the truck. "So what now? He owns this whole town." "Not everyone," Isabella said, pulling her laptop from her bag. "There's Naomi Fields, a journalist I trust. I sent her a warning signal last night. If she doesn't hear from me in 24 hours, she'll release everything." Raphael looked at her, admiration and fear mingling in his eyes. "You really don't know what fear is?" "Do you?" Isabella gave a faint smile. "I used to, but fear never saved anyone." The sound of a helicopter tore through the fragile stillness. Raphael ducked, spotting the searchlight sweeping over the eastern ridge. "They found our tracks. We need to move." They left the mine, speeding down dirt roads that snaked through the hills. The desert wind burned their faces as sand whipped around them, rattling the truck. Raphael veered onto a narrow path that followed a dry riverbed. "I know a place where we can hide Marisol Vega's place. She's a hacker I worked with once. If anyone can block your signal, it's her." They arrived at a container house wedged between two cliffs. After 3 knocks, the metal door swung open, revealing Marisol, a woman in her 40s with one side of her head shaved, dark glasses, and sharp, mischievous eyes. "Rafael Torres," she said with a smirk. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," Raphael replied. "And I brought you a special guest." Marisol eyed Isabella up and down. "FBI, right, yes?" "And I need your help," Isabella said plainly. "Someone inside the system is tampering with my transmission. I need to block all unauthorized access." Marisol folded her arms, intrigued. Sounds dangerous. I like dangerous. She flipped a switch and 10 monitors flared to lifelines of code cascading like a waterfall. Isabella handed her a hard drive. Everything's in here. Hank's records, the money transfers, victim lists, even the recordings. Marisol scrolled through, nodding approvingly. Nice. But you've got bigger problems than Santa Esperanza. Since this morning, the FBI's El Paso office has been locked out. Someone's trying to erase your files from the central system. Isabella leaned forward. Can you stop them? Marisol grinned. I can't stop them, but I can block them. Give me 10 minutes. You have 5. Isabella said, checking her watch. Raphael moved to the door to keep watch. From a distance came the growl of engines growing louder. Not good, he called out. They're sweeping this area. Marisol's fingers flew over the keyboard, sweat beading on her forehead. Almost there, almost done. I've sealed all entry points. They'll think the data's wiped, but I've rerouted everything to a temporary server in Phoenix. They'll never trace it. Isabella gripped her shoulder. Thank you. Now leave. Don't contact me again. Marisol shook her head. You don't get it. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for justice. This town's been bleeding for too long. Raphael shouted. We have to go. They bolted out just as engines roared closer. Police vehicles swarmed in red lights flashing through clouds of sand. Bullets tore through the container walls, sparks flying. Isabella ducked. Hold the wheel steady, she yelled. Raphael's truck skidded down a steep path, tires slipping through sand, but he kept control. Gunfire echoed behind them. Then came a thunderous explosion. Marisol's house engulfed in flames, blue fire curling into the sky like a final farewell. Isabella glanced back through the mirror, her eyes cold. She knew the cost and chose to stay. She deserves to be remembered. Raphael gritted his teeth. Now, it's just us. No, Isabella said quietly. There are still dozens of victims, hundreds waiting for us to bring the truth to light. They're why I'm still alive. When the sun climbed higher, they stopped by a patch of dry grass off the highway. Raphael refueled the truck, while Isabella pulled out a satellite phone calling Naomi Fields. The journalist's voice crackled through static. Isabella. You're alive. I was about to go public with the data. Not yet, Isabella said quickly. I need more time. I want to catch them in person, not just expose them on paper. I need you to organize a press conference in Albuquerque, 3 days from now. Are you sure they're hunting you? I'm done hiding. When light shines, darkness has nowhere to go. Trust me. Naomi was silent for a moment, then said, All right. I'll make it happen. But get somewhere safe first. I don't want to broadcast your funeral. Isabella smiled faintly. If I don't make it tell my story as a warning. She hung up and looked toward the horizon. The highway stretched like a silver thread across the desert. Raphael joined her, pride and fear mixed in his gaze. 3 days. We've got 3 days to end this hell. Isabella tightened her grip on her gun, her eyes fixed on Santa Esperanza, fading in the dusty distance. 3 days is enough, because once justice starts moving, nothing can stop it. Far away, the wind carried the heat of the desert and the scent of smoke still lingering from the fire. Overhead, a flock of black crows circled like exclamation marks written by fate. Isabella closed her eyes, feeling her heartbeat steady, fierce. Not from fear, but from certainty. The game had changed. The hunters had become the hunted. And she, the woman they once mocked in a dusty cafe, was about to become the storm that would tear down the rotten empire called Santa Esperanza. 3 days passed, like 3 blades each, cutting deeper into the town's skin. Isabella and Raphael moved in shifts, taking turns to rest, living like tightrope walkers suspended above hell. Every time they stopped, they could hear sirens in the distance, echoing like death bells. Naomi had confirmed the location of the press conference in Albuquerque and promised a live broadcast. But she emphasized one thing for the story to remain untwisted. There had to be physical evidence the leather ledger locked in Hank's safe. Without it, every word could be denied. Isabella knew the risk. Her plan was a lightning strike draw Hank out when he came to collect a shipment of counterfeit funds. While he was distracted in the back lot of the town hall, Raphael would steal the key from the administrative office, open the safe, photograph the ledger, and vanish before the police could react. Everything had to run with the precision of a clock, but she hadn't overlooked one thing. There was a rat inside the FBI field office in El Paso. Warren Blake, the man she had sent her reports to, had been acting more like someone protecting an ally than upholding justice. Isabella had to assume betrayal. She had already built layers of insurance audio recordings stored on a physical hard drive, backup copies, transferred to a temporary server in Phoenix, and a secondary beacon that would activate automatically if she failed to check in on time. On the morning of the operation, Raphael went ahead into the town hall disguised as an air conditioning repairman. Sweat soaked through his shirt, his face weary but his eyes alert. Isabella waited from across the street, hidden behind an old truck. In her pocket was a replica key crafted by Raphael the night before and a small USB drive containing the complete scan of the ledger. If everything went right, they would be gone before Hank realized what had happened. Yet even with every detail prepared, the tension never eased. Isabella received an encrypted message from an unknown number. "We have a cleanup team ready if you activate the beacon. But who do you trust? Warren or Houston?" The short message chilled her blood. Her trust in the Bureau had corroded long ago. She replied with a single line, "Activate only when necessary. No one else knows." When Raphael entered the office, Hank was there as always, pressed uniform, fake smile, predatory eyes. Isabella watched from afar through the hidden lens in her sunglasses, her pulse racing, though her mind remained cold and calculating. Raphael pretended to forget the key in his hand, crouching to tighten a screw, while the mayor's aide stepped out to take a supposed emergency call. Right on cue, Hank left the room. Raphael rose, quickly reaching for the safe handle. The moment the safe opened felt like standing on a knife's edge. Isabella could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as she saw Raphael lift the leather ledger, flipping through the pages. Names, transfer codes, the initial CO, each mark burned like ink branded into flesh. A surge of heat rushed through her. This was it, the weapon that would bring down the empire they had built on fear. Then came footsteps. Faster. A shout. Isabella held her breath. The game wasn't over. But she had what she needed now, and from this moment on, every excuse, every denial, every lie would turn to dust. Footsteps thundered behind Raphael, quick, heavy, cold. He barely had time to grab the ledger before a shadow lunged. A rough hand yanked him down the chair, crashed to the floor. Outside, Isabella heard the commotion, her heart tightening. Through the hidden lens in her sunglasses, she saw Hank McCord, storm in face, flushed with fury, 2 guards at his back. "I told you, Raphael, in Santa Esperanza, traitors don't live long." He tore the ledger from Raphael's hands, eyes darting over the pages until they froze on the initials C.O. Camila Ochoa. For a split second, Shock flickered across his face before he stuffed the book inside his jacket. No one sees this understand. Isabella knew this was the moment she couldn't miss. She stepped from the shadows, moving fast down the hallway, gun raised, her voice cutting through the air. "Put the book down, Hank!" He spun around, eyes hard as stone. "So, here she is. Who do you think you are, some kind of hero?" He laughed, a rasping sound that scraped through his teeth. "You're just a pawn, sweetheart. I've got friends in the FBI, people who clean up better than you ever could." "That friend was just arrested," Isabella said calmly. "Warren Blake. Houston has the entire network." For an instant, Hank froze. His smirk vanished. From outside came the rising wail of sirens. Raphael surged up, slamming one of the guards to the ground. Isabella stepped forward, wrenched the ledger from Hank's grasp, and backed away. The window behind her exploded under gunfire. She dove into the hallway as shouts echoed through the building. "Stop her! Don't let her escape!" Outside, chaos erupted. FBI vehicles from Houston flooded the square helicopters, sweeping bright lights across the roof of the town hall. Townspeople poured into the streets, shouting. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "All local officers, drop your weapons. This is a federal order." Hank tried to hold his swagger, but his hands trembled. "I'm the law here," he shouted. His roar was drowned out by a clear, commanding voice from an agent in body armor. "Not anymore, McCord. You're under arrest for corruption, extortion, and obstruction of justice." The cuffs clicked shut with a dry, final snap. In front of live cameras, the leather ledger in Isabella's hands was sealed as evidence. Naomi Fields, on the other end of the line, streamed everything live across social media. The footage spread like wildfire the moment Hank was led away. Camila Ochoa's face emerging from the crowd, screaming denials. Then came applause, and then cheers. Isabella stood in the middle of the glowing square hair-tousled face, streaked with dust, eyes blazing. Raphael stepped beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We did it." "Not yet," she said softly. "This is just the beginning." She lifted her gaze to the night sky. Amid the flashing lights, she caught her own reflection in the helicopter. Glass, the woman once mocked, in a dusty cafe now standing over the ruins of a fallen empire. Santa Esperanza had awakened, and at last justice had found its voice. 3 days later, Santa Esperanza felt as if it had finally awakened from a long, fevered dream. Photographs of Hank McCord in handcuffs and Camila Ochoa being escorted out of town hall flooded every newspaper front page. On television, Naomi Fields delivered a special report. The federal investigation in New Mexico has exposed a corruption network spanning more than 20 years involving local police administrative officials and even certain members within federal agencies. The image of Isabella Cruz, her calm face illuminated under the lights, had become a symbol of resolve and courage. But for her, victory wasn't about flashing cameras or praise. It was the quiet of the morning as she walked down the hallway of the FBI headquarters in Houston, hearing the echo of her footsteps against the tiles, knowing the case had closed the way it should. In the conference room, Agent Mateo Cruz handed her a new file. The official indictment, he said. McCord, Ochoa, and Warren Blake are all being prosecuted. 32 victims have been confirmed. That number may rise. Isabella flipped through the pages, her eyes tracing the names of people once forgotten, those threatened and stripped of their lives by a corrupt system. "Justice isn't just about catching the guilty," she said softly. "It's about making sure the forgotten are remembered by name." Mateo nodded. "That's why they've chosen you for the next mission. A new division is being created focused on investigating corruption across border towns. They want you to lead it." She smiled faintly, a mix of exhaustion and peace in her expression. "Justice needs more than one person. But if they need me, I'll keep going." That afternoon, she returned to Santa Esperanza one last time. The town still smelled of smoke and sand, but the air felt different. Children played outside the old police station, now bearing a sign that read, "Closed for Reformation." Raphael waited for her at Coyote's Rest, the cafe where everything began. It had reopened the tables, scrubbed clean, and on the wall hung a photograph of her holding up her badge during the press conference. He smiled as she walked in. "Take a seat, Agent. Today your coffee's on the house." Isabella sat down, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the room. "You're staying?" she asked. "I'm helping rebuild the new police force," Raphael said. "People need to see that not everyone in uniform betrayed them." She looked out the window where the afternoon sunlight stretched across the hills. "Santa Esperanza can finally breathe." Raphael nodded. "Because of you." Isabella shook her head. "No, because of the truth. I was only the one who told it." The desert wind swept through, carrying with it the scent of coffee and warm dust. For the first time in months, she felt peace. Justice had returned to the town, not loud, not dazzling, but quiet, steadfast, and impossible to erase. 1 month later, the morning in Santa Esperanza glowed as if the town had never known darkness. The newly painted town hall gleamed beneath the rising sun. The American flag fluttered proudly in the wind, and for the first time in years, the townspeople decorated the square with their own hands. They built a small stage and hung a banner that read, "Santa Esperanza, Reborn, Freedom, Justice, and Faith." Isabella stood at the back of the crowd, no longer wearing her FBI badge, just a woman in a white shirt and simple jeans. Beside her was Raphael holding a cup of hot coffee. On stage, the interim mayor, Rosa Martinez, a Latina woman in her 40s who had once been one of Hank's victims, addressed the crowd. "We lived in fear for too long. Now it's time to change. No one will be arrested for staying silent, and no one will be silenced for speaking the truth." Applause erupted, rolling through the square like a wave. Isabella smiled quietly, studying the faces before her, the woman who once wept by the roadside, now holding her son's hand, an old man lifting a sign that read, "Thank you, Agent Cruz." In those eyes, she saw it clearly. Justice was not the end. It was the beginning. After the ceremony, a young reporter approached her nervously. "Agent Cruz, do you believe justice always wins?" Isabella looked at the girl, her expression softening. "Justice doesn't always win," she said gently, "but it always returns. Slowly, painfully, but steadfastly. And when it does, no one can stop it." Raphael stepped in, half joking, half serious. "You should write that down. It might make the opening line for the next documentary." Isabella laughed, her first unguarded smile in months. "If they make a film, let me stay behind the camera. I just want to tell the story the way it truly happened, no embellishments, no omissions." That afternoon, she left the town, driving along the highway back toward Houston. The golden sunset stretched across her windshield, the red dunes in the distance fading behind her. On the radio, Naomi Fields was reading the news. Today, the federal agency officially announced the Santa Esperanza Victim Relief Fund, financed by assets seized from McCord and Ochoa. The first 43 recipients have received compensation and startup assistance. Listening, Isabella felt something strange relief mingled with emptiness. She thought of the faces now gone, Marisol the blind hacker. Her final smile when she said, I do this for justice. They were the nameless ones history would forget, yet they were the foundation upon which truth was built. As she crossed into Texas, her phone rang. It was Mateo Cruz. Washington has approved the Border Anti-Corruption Task Force. They want you to lead it. Isabella looked at the endless road ahead, the sunset glinting off her windshield. I'll come, she said softly, but not to command, to listen. She ended the call, her gaze fixed on the violet horizon. Behind her, Santa Esperanza grew smaller, but in her heart, it would never disappear. A place once swallowed by darkness had become proof that justice could be slow, fragile, but never extinguished. As night fell, she whispered to herself, if this story makes you believe that justice still exists, tell it again. Every retelling is a light, and the car disappeared into the night, leaving behind a single glimmer of light, small but eternal.